the World Storytelling Cafe, and it is the second Sunday. Well, when was the first one? I don't know, but it's the second Sunday. Therefore, it is time for us to join the wonderful Mike Russ from Get a Word in Edgeways for the Worldwide Story Round. I myself am sitting in a field in a Glastonbury Festival. Mike's sitting up the road. Others sitting in, I don't know where everyone else is. Maybe they can say that as they start. But right now, I'm handing over to Mike. Mike, over to you.
Thank you very much, John. Lovely to see you again. I see you in the middle of Glastonbury. Well, what goes on down there then? Is there a little bit of a shindig that goes on with that?
There's a little do, bit of a do.
Bit of a do, yes.
Bit of a do.
I must admit, but I did go to a little bit of a do down there once a few years ago in the Greenfields. I was invited to go down to Glastonbury, so I have a fond. I've only ever been once because I don't know any of the organisers down there, so they don't book me. So if you come across them all, tell them I'd love to come again.
Yeah, I just run my little tent in the in the kids' field, and I don't do the booking. I just administer the tent with who I'm given. But I will. But actually,
who have you got this year?
I got Yanina, Vaden, Christine Willison, who runs the Storytelling in the Kids Field. So I will tell her that you would like to come one year, and
but Donald and Pauline as well, haven't you?
Pauline Cordner. Yeah. She's arriving tomorrow morning. She'll have Donald Nelson in the car as well.
All right, okay.
So we've got a good crowd, and
almost as good as the festival I run. Not quite.
No, but there's a couple of bands on I want to see, and I'll go. I want to go and see the. I always go across and see the Sunday Legend, which this year is Diana Ross, which would be quite nice, quite
be good. Yeah,
be nice and relaxing.
Right, we'll leave you to it, and we hope you have a nice time. And I want you to send me a postcard.
Most unlikely, but I'll try. I will try. Anyway, I'm going to stay here and listening as long as my battery lasts. So
right. Okay, well, welcome. Welcome to everybody here again, and thank you very much for coming. We have 11 people here today, and that's absolutely wonderful again. Like I say every week or every fortnight, I can't do this without you people coming to tell stories, and I hope you all have a nice occasion. I will be here for as long as anybody wants me to be here to make sure that you always get a story here. Maria was first on, so we're going to go to her first. And Diana's been in touch because she's got to rush off and be famous somewhere else later on this evening, probably, because she's one of these people with a social calendar that's so wide that we're just lucky to have 5 minutes with her, that's all. So, Diana, if you go second, and then Keith, you go third. Is that okay, Keith? Yeah, I'm sure you understand, my friend. Maria, tell me what's happening on the picture behind you. Now, that looks like a volcano.
Yes, there's an eruption at my back. As you can see, and this is Mount Etna. It is one of the world's most active volcanoes, and it's the highest volcano in Europe.
Oh.
And it's in Sicily, in Italy.
Right, okay. Yeah.
And the origins of the word Etna is from a Greek word, which means I burn.
Right. Okay. Can I just remind everybody to mute themselves, please? If you're not muted, everybody just check to see you're muted. Okay. Thank you very much. Right. Oh, that's very interesting. So it's to do with the burning of the eyes. Wow.
Yeah.
Didn't know that. Okay.
Yes. Right. So now, ladies and gentlemen, join me on this journey back in time. We are going back to when Sicily was under Greek rules. At the time of ancient Greece, when the Olympian gods dominated the known world, and their power was constantly threatened by the biggest creature on earth, the giants. And the most feared giant was called Encelado. So Encelado wanted to conquer the Olympus, which was the abode of the gods. He wanted to take the place of Zeus, who was the father of the gods. So Encelado, he thought to build a ladder by putting one above another the world's mountains to reach the Olympus, which was so high that no human being could reach it. It was among the clouds, the Olympus, the house of the gods. So Encelado was very feared by the other giants, and they all accepted to help him. In fact, when Encelado got hungry, he used to spit fire from his mouth. So his siblings, they started to build this ladder to reach the Olympus. So they put the Mont Blanc, one of the mountains of Europe, they lift it and put it. And then they took the Dolomites. Do you remember? I told you about the Dolomites, the mountain in Italy. And they lift the Dolomites and put on it. And then they went to Asia and to Africa, and they put the K2 and they lift the K2. And so with the Everest, and so one above the other, they built a high ladder with all these mountains. So the ladder was almost completed, and Encelado was ready to climb it to reach the Olympus. But then Zeus, the father of gods, who lived in the Olympus, he looked out and he saw that Encelado was trying to climb to take his place. How dare him! He was so furious that he threw one thunderbolt, and he hit the Pale of Mountains, and this ladder shattered down into many pieces. And Encelado was covered and buried under this mountain. He was unable to free himself from the weight of the rocks. You have to imagine thousands and tons of rocks that covered his body. He was so angry that he started to breathe louder and louder, and then he erupted flames from his mouth, and the flames came out with a violent roar. So this lava, which was born from his mouth, flowed down, and then a new mountain was born. It was a volcano. And from that day on, it was called Etna, which means I burn. And this myth of Encelado tells us that every time that Encelado awakes, he unleashes its power. So, friends, if you visit Etna and if you go to Sicily, I suggest you to do this journey, and you can see when when Etna erupts, it's Encelado, the giant, that breathes and he makes this eruption. So thank you.
Oh, that's lovely. I love stories like that. That's wonderful. And thank you very much. And I bet that goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years, I would think, a story like that. Yeah. And I say it every time, and I say it again, your English, the good bit about the way you speak English is the diction, is the clarity of the words. It's always really important. Okay, so well done, well done. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you for being first.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to the Highlands of Scotland next. So we're going to Diana, then back to Lincolnshire. Okay, Diana.
Hi, that was great, Maria. Louisa, I really enjoyed that. I love a dramatic story.
Yeah.
Anyway, Right, my story is from Scotland, and it's a traveller story, and it's one in Duncan Williamson's collection. Sorry, a little bit hoarse today. Okay, there was once a man who lived just outside a village, and he stayed near this forest. All he had was a little hut, and if this man had been alive today, people would marvel at him and think to themselves, this man has very little footprint, if any at all. He would have been hailed as being eco-friendly because all he had in life was what he needed. And he just had a small amount of clothes, this little hut. And what he did for a living was he collected sticks, and he would collect them in the forest. Now, this is set back in the mid-20th century. And at that time, lots of people had coal fires, unlike now. And the fires were for keeping people warm, but they also kept the water hot if you needed any washing done. And it was also for cooking. So the sticks were very important. And what this man did, he would collect the sticks, make sure they were all the right length for kindling, or a bit bigger for lasting a bit longer on the fire. And he had it down to a fine art. And he took them into the village and he sold them. He didn't make a lot of money, but he did make enough to get by. And the problem was, he didn't really have any friends or relatives. He didn't really have any human company at all. And the villagers were a bit, you know, they were a bit standoffish, to say the least. Well, he didn't look like them, so that was one reason to be wary. I mean, he was a hunchback, and he had this big bent over look about him, and a long thin face and a long thin beard. And there wasn't anything beautiful about his features. But if they'd only looked into his eyes were alive, and he was a kind man, and he was thoughtful. But they never did that. And the children used to throw things at him just out of sheer spite or malice. And he used to run away back to the forest as quickly as he could. But he wasn't actually lonely, although he didn't have human company. He was very fortunate in that what he loved to do would be get something from the shop to eat and take it to the forest and share his food with the animals, all the little mice or the rabbits or the dormice, the hedgehog. All these would cluster around. And they didn't often eat the food, but there was something about that man. He had a way with animals, and he made them feel comfortable. And in his own way, he took notice of what they were up to. Well, he would do that quite a lot. And there would be a squirrel and a robin and a swallow as well, sometimes even a deer. And he enjoyed spending his time with the animals. And it got to be that he went every day to this forest. And the animals expected him. And they were always pleased to see him, because they knew that he would never do any harm to them. And they got to know him without having to think about his features. They got to know him as a person. They got to know how kind he was. Well, like I say, one day he went out and he had some sticks to sell. He sold them as quickly as he could. He got some money from the shop for something to eat, and he went back down. And he had some time with the animals. But oddly enough, the day after that, he didn't appear. And they wondered, why? And this was their friend. Well, maybe one day was all right to miss him, but 2 days, 3 days? No, that wasn't going to work. They were worried, and what would they do? And all the animals were talking at the same time and trying to work out the problem. But there was something else going on. There was a loch nearby, a beautiful loch. And quite often the man used to sit there and just look out to the loch, and there was the white lady, this beautiful swan, a mute swan. And the man was mute too. He couldn't actually speak, but he could hear very well. And he tried everything to entice this swan over. And all the other animals came no problem, but not this swan. It was always that bit more aloof, and maybe it just worried that this man would do the swan some harm. But anyway, he always wondered about the swan. But like I say, he'd gone missing. Well, the other animals hadn't seen him for a bit. And what were they going to do? They decided collectively they would go and see Mr. Owl. And of course, they had to wait till nighttime. Well, actually twilight, because Owl always likes to be ready to go as soon as it's time to get up. So they all went. And when they all got there, they're all worried. So they all start talking at the same time. And poor Owl can't make out anything that's being said. And Owl just sits up in the big tree and flaps his wings. And that's enough to get them all to be quiet. And then Robin tells the story. And now Owl is a very observant character. He's the sort of person that when he's out and about, he notices things. And he had often noticed that the man would stay quite late by the loch side and look out at the swan. And the swan would stay back. Well, they worked out, these animals, they kept saying to Mr. Owl, I think there's something wrong with the man. I think he's ill. We'll need to do something about it. Do you have any suggestions? And he thought, well, I'm not sure. Maybe it has got something to do with the Lady of the Lake. And, well, but yeah, but what do we do about it, says animals. Well, maybe someone needs to go out to the Lady of the Lake. And Robin says, well, I can't go. I'm not good at flying over water and I'm just used to flying around about this wood. And Owl says, no, 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 Swallow will go. Swallow will go and out to the swan and circle round and tell that this man who often comes to sit by the lake is ill. And maybe just the fact that the swan's taking notice or does something about it will make that bit of difference, because the man puts such a lot of store on this beautiful creature who, like him, was mute. Well, Swallow went out and circled and came back, and they noticed Swan turning. And so they thought, yes, something is happening here. And the swan came forward and went down towards the man's hut. And all the animals are so excited. They're wondering what will happen and will it be a good ending or not? And nothing happens much to begin with. They go around by the window. Robin is the only one that can see in properly. And what happens is the swan goes up the steps, and there, lying down, is this man, all hunched on his back with his long face and his long beard. And he's completely still and he doesn't look well at all. He's quite a grey pallor about him. And well, the swan goes in and just waits a moment. And they're all wanting to know what's going on. And they're all pulling at Robin's tail thinking, come on, Robin, tell us. But Robin is so fixated with what's going on, he can't get any words out. Well, he notices that the swan goes up to the hunchback and puts his neck round the hunchback. And the hunchback opens his eyes and he's looking happy. He's looking pleased about this. And then after that, the swan and him cuddle all the more. And it's like he's found his long lost friend after all. And then he gets this feather from behind him and he takes it, does the swan, and pierces it into the hunchback's chest. And Robin's still at the window and he's going frantic by now because it's all so wonderful and unbelievable and amazing and fascinating all at once, and he doesn't know what to do for the best. And all the animals down below are desperate to know what's going on, but still Robin can't speak. He's so full of emotion. And then slowly the hunchback changes. His shape changes. And instead of having a long head and a long beard, he has a beautiful long neck that he's always admired about the swan. And he has a beak and he changes into a beautiful swan. And it's so amazing. And he comes down the steps of the hut and out he goes with the mute swan. And well, Robin still can't see anything, but all the other animals can see now. They can see that they're heading off to the loch. And that's where I end the story, with the two swans on the loch.
Oh, thank you, Diane. I heard Duncan Williams
You'll know
tell
that
me
one.
that story 35 years ago. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you
Okay.
very much. That's great. Yeah. Well, I hope you have an enjoyable evening, and thank you for popping in and telling us that. That was great. Thank you very much. So we're going to go to Keith in Lincolnshire.
Well, hello, everybody. I've just completed a fortnight, that's 2 weeks, of storytelling in schools, where I had to, I'm privileged in telling stories to 9 different schools in the Skegness area. And this is a story that I told at one of the assemblies, the collective worship in one of the schools in Skegness. And I was overwhelmed that after I told the story and said a short prayer, I got so many claps and cheers from 600 children, it just blew me away. So I thought I would tell you this story, which I'm sure maybe some of you know, and I'll tell you where I got it from afterwards. It's a story from West Africa. There was a blind man who lived with his sister in a small hut on the edge of a forest. And in front of the hut, there was a road that many people would walk up and down, going to work and going to see relatives, going to see people. And the people that walked by found out that this blind man was very wise. And they'd ask him questions, or perhaps they had a problem that needed solving. Or they had to devise a plan to overcome something. And he would always give the right answer. He'd give very good answers to all their problems and all their questions. And some would say, well, blind man, why is it you've got so much wisdom? How is it you can answer all these questions so cleverly? And he would say, because I see with my ears. Now, the blind man's sister fell in love with a hunter. And after a few months, they were courting and eventually they were married. And the blind man came to live in the hut with his new wife, the sister of the blind man, and the blind man. But the hunter had no time for the blind man. What good is a man with no eyes? And his new wife would say, well, he can answer all these questions, very wise, he's very clever. But the hunter said, no. What good is a man with no eyes? And every day the hunter would go out into the forest with his bow and his arrow and with his spears and his traps. And he'd go out hunting. And every night when he'd come home, he'd obviously trapped something and caught something. But every night the blind man would say, take me hunting with you tomorrow. But the hunter would have nothing to do with it. What goes a man with no eyes? It's no good. No. And this went on night after night, with the blind man asking the hunter to take him on a hunt the following day. But the hunter had just no time for him. But one day the hunter returned with a fat gazelle. And they had a big feast that night. And the hunter was very happy. And he turned to the blind man and said, okay, very well. Tomorrow you can come hunting with me. And so the next morning they set off. The hunter with his bow and arrows, and his spears and his traps. And he took hold of the blind man's hand and led him through the forest. And they walked for hours through all the forest and down all the paths. And then suddenly the blind man shook the hand of the hunter and said, "Shh, there's a lion." And the hunter looked around, they couldn't see a lion anywhere. And they walked on a little further. And there, under a tree, was a lion having had a big kill and a big feed, and he was fast asleep. And the hunter said to the blind man, "How did you know that that lion was there?" And the blind man would say, "Because I see with my ears." And they walked on for hours and hours and hours through the forest, down the track. And suddenly the blind man said, "Shh, there's an elephant." And the hunter looked round, couldn't see an elephant anywhere. And the blind man said, "But it's all right. The elephant is having a bath and a shower just round there." And sure enough, they walked on a bit further. And there was the elephant, and it was squirting water up through its trunk into the air and having a shower in this muddy pond. And the hunter said to the blind man, "Well, how do you know that that elephant was there?" And the blind man would say, "Because I see with my ears." Now they walked on a bit further through the forest until they came to a clearing. And there the hunter, he set his trap, and he showed the blind man how to set his trap. And the hunter said to the blind man, "We'll return tomorrow and see what we have caught in our traps." And so they returned home, and next morning they set off. And the hunter was about to take hold of the hand of the blind man to lead him through the paths. The blind man said, "I don't need any guidance today." And he went ahead of the hunter, and he walked down the paths. He made the right turns at the right place. He didn't stub his toe on a stone or trip up over any roots, and led the hunter all the way through the forest without fault, and came to the clearing. And there in the clearing was the two traps. Now, in the hunter's trap was this small grey bird. But in the blind man's trap, there was this beautiful bird, a bigger bird, which was crimson and gold and blue, a wonderful plumage. And as the hunter went over, he thought to himself, "Well, the blind man won't know any difference." So he took the grey bird out of his own trap and he gave it to the blind man. Then he took the beautiful bird, the crimson and gold and blue bird, and wonderfully fledged bird, for himself. And they started on their way home. And the hunter said to the blind man, "Well, if you're so clever and so wise, why are there so many arguments between people? Why are there so many wars? Why is there so much destruction between people in the world?" And the blind man said to the hunter, "Because there's people like you that take what doesn't belong to them." Well, at that, the hunter was just cut to the heart. And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And he took the grey bird out of the blind man's hands and put in the beautiful bird into the hands of the blind man. And as they walked on, the hunter said to the blind man, "Now, why is there so much love and happiness and good relationships? There's so much friendship in the world." And the blind man said to the hunter, "It's because there's people like you that learn from their mistakes." And they went back, and they lived happily together. And if anybody ever asks, well, why did the blind man, why is he so wise, so clever? The hunter would put his arm around him and say, because he is so clever, because he sees with his ears and he hears with his heart.
Thank you, Keith.
I got that from Hugh Lupton, if you wanted to know.
Well, Hugh Lupton got it from Duncan Williamson then.
Oh, right.
Absolutely.
Go around.
Yeah. And Duncan said he got that one off Stanley, I think, actually, or Stanley got it. It comes from the Highlands anyway. Where I first heard it, Highlands anyway, whichever way you took that. But that's a great story, well told. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're going to go to Carmel now, who's not there. Are you there, Carmel? Right. Then I'm going to go to Baba and then Janet. Okay. And I can't see Baba either, and he's done as well. Are you there, Baba?
You can't see. Yes, I can see me. You can't see me?
No, I can't see you. No. Oh,
Can anyone?
Yes,
okay.
I can see you, Baba.
All right,
We can
because
see you now. Yeah.
for a person
Yeah,
whose
we-
name has C, not to be seen is not a good thing.
Oh, being invisible is great, Baba. It's an extra power if you're invisible.
Yeah, but I've been there, done that. It wears off after a while.
Okay, yeah.
Have you ever tried to eat while invisible? You can't find your mouth.
I think you could find your mouth, Baba.
I knew I'd set myself up for that. Well done, Diana. Well done.
Well done, boy. So we're going to go Baba, then you, Janet. Okay, Janet. After Baba, wave if you can see me, Janet.
Oh, Janet. Well, I waved anyhow. Oh, Janet, thank you for responding to the Facebook inquiry. Thank you very much. Because I've been just trying to find that picture for over a month. Well, you're muted, so they can't hear you.
Did you find it?
No,
Did
Maria is going to send me another one. I sent her, I copied and pasted you're agreeing to let me use you in the picture. So she's going to send it to me. And for those of you wondering what we're talking about, while we were in Marrakesh, there's this wonderful picture of Janet and John Rowe on our first night of storytelling. And I want to use it in the project I'm working on, which is taking longer than I anticipated because I'm not a videographer, et cetera, et cetera. But anyhow, I was setting the picture up, hit the wrong button, sliced Janet out of the picture. And I've been trying for over a month to find out who knows where the picture came from. And yesterday, the answer was delivered. So thank you, Janet, and thank you, Maria. I tell you, I met some wonderful souls in Marrakesh and looking forward to meeting even more wonderful souls in 2023. Okay, as for the story I'm doing today, I work with an organization called Kids and Culture Camp, KCC for short. It is a great camp. It was started by a group of mothers who homeschool, and they network. And every summer, and sometimes during the various school breaks, they put together programs where they bring kids. It's an inclusive program where they bring kids of all backgrounds, et cetera, sometimes even far away as Nigeria, to come and attend their various camps. And I have been blessed to work with them for the last 10 or so years. Well, every time they have a camp, they have a theme. And the theme starting tomorrow is Tanzania. Whoa. So I had to throw all of my stories out of the window, and I've been doing research to get stories from Tanzania. So I have a story from Zanzibar, which is an island right off of Tanzania. And the two cultures are related, are intertwined. And I want to share that story with you. So although the story takes place a time ago, it's a story in progress. Now, Usually my stories come from having listened to story rounds or a lot of oral history or a lot of studies connecting various aspects of the same story together. But this one called Hamdani I'm borrowing aspects of it from a book that was adapted and illustrated by Charles Bible. And it's a wonderful story. So I have my cheat note. This story is so new that even though I'm writing it down, the ink has not yet dried, which is interesting since I'm typing it on a computer. Anyhow, so this story is about a man named Hamdani. Now, Hamdani, and this story mixes elements of Western and African aspects and even the monetary references, because they refer to dimes. And all of my experience with African cultures, I have yet to find one that has its own monetary system that includes a dime. And that's a dime shame. But anyhow, on with the story. So Hamdani, he was a fellow not, if he didn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck at all. He was not fortunate. He had no job. Jobs were scarce. He couldn't find a job. He couldn't even find work. He wasn't even very good as a beggar, but every day he did that. He begged and he begged and he begged and he looked and he looked and he looked, and he would often be found by the trash or garbage heap looking for little pieces of millet so he can have at least something to eat. The village people, they made fun of him. Even the children made fun of him. Look, he's at the garbage heap looking for millet. Glad I'm not him. Ooh, sucks to be you. Glad I'm not you. Oh man, they made such terrible fun of him. And they made fun of him every day and every day and every day. But he kept looking and he kept looking and he kept looking. And every day he would find just enough millet to give him something to put in his stomach. Well, one day while he was looking, he came across a dime. A dime in Africa. A dime. Now, this is way, way back then when a dime could buy you a lot. When I was growing up, a nickel could buy you a loaf of bread. That was a long time ago. Well, he had this dime and he was trying to figure out what to do with it. He could use this dime to buy himself some food, that he knew. But just about then he heard a lot of noise going on and he looked up and there was a man approaching him with a cart drawn by ox. No, they were drawn by donkeys. And in the cart or on the cart was a cage, and in the cage were little gazelles. Gazelles. That's my graceful interpretation of a gazelle. Yeah, buddy, Mike, you do it much better than I. And so, so Hamdani said, hey, bring that over here. And the kid said, nah, you don't want to do that. He poor. They said he poor. He ain't got no money. He goes to the garbage heap looking for millet. You don't want to be bothered with him. You're wasting your time. But the merchant didn't pay them any mind, and he walked over. And Hamdani said, oh, so what you got in there? Well, I have some gazelles, some of the finest gazelles you've ever seen. And although they're small, I guarantee they're great gazelles. He said, well, forgive me for my next accent. Oi, how much you gonna charge for those? He says, well, I have a very small one. I think a dime would be good. A dime? A dime. A dime? A dime. I got a dime. So he gave the merchant the dime, and the merchant gave him the smallest little gazelle you ever want to see. But it was a beautiful gazelle, a graceful gazelle, because gazelles are graceful. And he took the little gazelle. He said, oh, I love you. You're so cute. You're so cute. You're so cute. And he took the gazelle to what he called home, the little hovel where he slept every night. So after a day or two, the gazelle said, hey, master. And Hamdani turned around. He said, who, someone in my house? Who's speaking? It's me. What? What? A gazelle that can speak? Hey, there are more wondrous things in the world than a gazelle that can speak. Listen, Master, I have to be honest with you. I love you dearly. I'm so glad you brought me from that merchant. But you know, every day you go looking at garbage heaps to find a few grains of millet, and that might be all well and fine for you, but I'm a gazelle. That's not good for me at all. That's the look on his face because he still can't believe the gazelle is talking. He said, oh, and by the way, my name is Kijipa, and I have a proposal. Okay. Well, let me look for the food that I need for me. I'll leave in the morning. I'll come back in the evening. You don't have to worry about it. I'll always come back. I love you. I'm loyal to you. And you can go look for millet, but I need things that are not millet. And so Diani said, oh, okay. And so early the next morning, while Keith was enjoying his meal, Kijipi, do that again, Mike, gracefully, thank you, Mike, leaped through the forest, finding the food that he needed for his sustenance. And he did this day in and day out and day out and day in. But one day while he was out foraging for food, he came across a colossal, humongous, brilliant diamond. And he thought to himself, oh, I should take this to my master. Oh, no, wait. If I take this to my master, the people in the village will only steal it from him. And so, during the equivalent of stroking a long beard, which gazelles don't have, he thought to himself, what would Keith Butters do? And he said, I know, I'll take this to the Sultan. And so he took the diamond to the Sultan. And when he got to the Sultan, he said, oh, master, oh, great Sultan, I am Kijipi. I am a talking gazelle. And the Sultan said, there are more wondrous things in the world than a gazelle that talks. How do you honor me? Why do you honor me? He said, I bring this diamond. And he put the diamond down in front of the Sultan. And I've always wondered how he was able to talk with that huge diamond in his mouth, but that's another story for another day. He says, I bring you this gift from my master, who is also a sultan in a nearby village. And he would wish to come and have dinner with you. And so the two of you can get to know each other better. And the Sultan looked at the size of that diamond and he thought, whoa, this Sultan must be rich. Of course I want him as a friend. He said, yes. Go bade your master to come join me. We will have a splendid feast. There will be music, there will be dancing, and there will be food. And so the gazelle gracefully ran all the way back to Diani. And he said, oh, master, the Sultan wishes to have you come visit him for a meal. What? Oh, no way. Look at me. It's clear that I'm poor, that I'm a pauper. I have no money. I have nothing. He says, no, don't worry about that. I am loyal to you. I love you. I will take care of this. Just come with me. And so the next day they went and they came to a stream. He said, master, stay here. Take off all your clothes, stay here and bathe, but don't move from this spot until I come back. And he took the rags and rigged them and he got rid of them. And then he pranced or gazelled, gracefully made his way back to the Sultan. He said, oh, almighty Sultan, my master, he was robbed, he was jumped, he was beaten. They took his clothes, they took his money, they took his diamonds, they took his riches, and he's sitting by a stream. As nature brought him into this world. Well, the Sultan, hearing that another Sultan had been attacked and robbed and taken all of his jewelry and clothes and things taken, he said, well, we can't have this. And he summoned his court and he said, bring me some of the finest clothes. Bring me the finest clothes and jewelry and footwear that behest a Sultan. Bring me the clothes you would bring as if you were dressing me yourselves. And so quickly they bought and assembled all the clothes, and they bought diamonds and rings and footwear, and they put it in the back of the gazelle, and he gracefully ran all the way back to the stream. When he got to the stream, Diani was like, oh, he said, yes, master. Now, you must listen to me closely. When you get to the sultans, say yes, nod, and agreement. Keep your conversation short but polite. He thinks that you are a fellow sultan and that you were robbed, and he has sent some of his finest so that you can attend the feast that he has prepared in your honor. And so Diani got dressed in his finery, looking every bit of that of a sultan. His clothes, his turban, his robes, everything spoke, I am sultan. And then walking slowly and gracefully, they walked back, take two, and mounting one of the horses that the sultan had sent, because remember, he had been robbed and everything had been stolen, they made their way to the sultan's house, the sultan's palace. And when they got there, oh man, you talk about a feast. There was dancing and food. There was music and food. Did I mention there was food? And they had a great time. And as it happens with many of these stories, the sultan had a daughter. And the daughter and Diani, well, they hit it off. They had pleasant conversation and they enjoyed each other's company. And as the days wore on, because remember, these journeys were very seldom overnight. As the days wore on, you could say they were smitten with each other. And with the consent of the sultan, they were married. Diani moved into the sultan's palace, and he and his wife were very happy together. And they were just so happy. If they had been any happier, they would have been twins. But Diani forgot about Kejipa. He paid him no mind. And at first, Kejipa tried to ignore it, but after a while, he felt hurt. He felt pain in his heart, as only a person who's been ignored by someone they love and respect can feel. And he looked at his master and said, Master, you have all this feast, all this food. What about me? What about you? You're just a gazelle. Go away. Leave me alone. And Kejipa, feeling hurt, kind of sauntered away. Kejipa was very sad. After all he had done for his master had abandoned him. He didn't understand this. And in his sorrow, he walked until he reached the modest home of a very old but wise lady. And she sensed there was great pain in the gazelle's heart. And she bade him enter. And she talked to him. She said, what ails you, young gazelle? He says, I have a master that I've done much for. I have a master that used to be a beggar who is now considered a sultan. I have a master who had nothing but now has much. But he doesn't even give me the time of day. He doesn't acknowledge me. He treats me as if I were a bother, a hindrance. My heart aches. I don't feel well. And with that, the gazelle laid his head on her lap. The old lady was very, very concerned, and she took issue with this. And so she began to make her way to the sultan's palace. In the meantime, Diani's wife said, where is Kejipa? How would I know and why would I care? But you're a gazelle. I thought he's just a gazelle. You bother me asking about him. Speak no more of him. It's just a gazelle. But I said, speak no more of him. Is that where we get talk to the hand? And the wife, although she was saddened, spoke no more of this. And the little old lady made her way to the palace and gained audience with Diani. He says, Diani, why have you forsaken Kejipa? He said, Kejipa? Oh, you mean that gazelle? Of what concern is that gazelle to me? I don't need him. You can have him. I away with you. I don't need him. And the old lady said, remember that what you have because of him. Lose him and lose what you have. And she made her way back to her modest home. But you see, Kijipu's heart was broken, for he had given much to the person that he was loyal to and loved. And this person had abandoned him and he gave nothing in return. And I'm sad to say, Kijipu passed away. That night, Hanani's wife had a dream that she was at her father's palace and she was seeking a husband. That night, Hanani had a dream that he was searching the garbage heaps for millet to put into his stomach. In the morning, when Hanani's wife awakened, she was back at her father's palace, seeking a husband. And when Hanani awakened, he was at the trash heap, looking for millet to fill his stomach. And the people in the village laughed at him, and the children laughed and made fun of him. Where have you been, Hanani? Where have you been? We thought maybe you had gone away or maybe even died. But no, here you are once again at the trash heap, looking for millet, looking for millet. You wretched person, you wretched person. Sucks to be you. Would not want to be you. Now, some of you may be wondering, well, what's the purpose of this story? There's an old saying that says, the people you see going up the ladder are the same people you'll see going down the ladder. In America, we say the same people you see going up the elevator are the same people you'll see coming down the elevator. And I guess for my United Kingdom, people would be going up the lift, coming down the lift. No, not uplifting, but anyhow, the moral of the story is be kind to those who help you, who assist you, who are loyal to you, who love you. For if you abandon and give nothing in return for their love and loyalty, you may lose all that they gave to you in love and loyalty. Asante, thank you. And that is my tip.
Oh, no, Baba, what we say is be nice to the people you meet on the way up, because you might meet them again on the way down.
Yes.
That's how we say it. Yeah,
Thank you,
that's
Mike.
how we say it. Right. Okay,
You were graceful
so
in telling
was-
that, just like you were graceful in being the Gazette. Thanks for being a
Right,
good
so
sport.
we're going to go to Janet. After Janet, Carmel, are you going to be on? So we're going to go to Janet, then Carmel, and then Despina. But I'm going to give it a break for a couple of minutes because I have started having a stop after an hour so everybody can just relax and go to the toilet and things. So I'm going to give a 5-minute comfort break, we call them sometimes. Then if I want to hear before you go tonight about things that you're doing. I've always telling us about things that we're doing, saying about your schools, Keith. And we'll have a couple of minutes doing this because Despina, she was doing all the kids stuff a few weeks ago and stuff like that. So, well, we've got a bit of time tonight. So 5 minutes, go to the toilet and everything else, and I'll see you back there.
I'm not quite sure if I'm.
Not quite sure about.
If I was to tell after the break or before the break.
Well, I tell you what, why don't we break the break up and ask him after the break? No,
Tell
you're
you
supposed
what.
to tell after the break, after the break.
Tell you what, I'll go and get myself something tasty to drink, and then I'll be back. Aye, okay. Because everybody, I don't know. Am I just not with it tonight?
There's something in the air. Actually, this weekend in Washington, D.C., we have a celebration going on saying there's something in the water. But that comes from the fact that D.C. produces so many artists and so many sports phenoms that people say, well, how does DC do all this? And people say it must be something in the water.
Ah, right. Well, it looks as though. So if you're not there, I don't know what I'm going to say next. Here's Mike. Mike.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I was, from what you said, was to tell before the break or after the break.
No, after the break.
Ah, right. In that case,
After.
I'm away for 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, after the break, Janet. We'll be going about an hour. Okay.
Right. Okay. Okay, Grant. I'll be back in 5.
Okay. And I have also, Baba, got myself a beer.
Ah,
This is Coca-Cola.
right.
Yeah, look, you drink it in a pint glass. Look.
I think since today is Father's Day here, after this, I'm going to pour myself a glass of fine wine and thank the people who have been wishing me a happy Father's Day. And you may also hear me mention Juneteenth, which is another celebration we have here. Although Baden was telling me they have the equivalent in England. But Juneteenth is about a year and a half after the Civil War, 2.5 years after Lincoln wrote his proclamation. The last of the enslaved people were freed. So we celebrate June.
Yeah, I've never heard of that one before.
Well, stick around.
I'd never heard of it before. I must admit. We should celebrate William Wilberforce. He was the guy who stopped the slavery altogether here. That would be a good.
See, I need to know more about that. But on June 19th or thereabouts, many African Americans who know about Juneteenth, that's when we celebrate our July 4th. So, that was when we got the freedom, so-called freedom. But and for a while, celebrating of Juneteenth could cost you your job or your livelihood. So sometimes it was secret celebrations, but now it's out in the open, and it is now a federal holiday.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds good. William Wilberforce was the one who went to our parliament and got slavery banned in the whole of the empire, as it was called in them days.
Do me a favor and put his name down in the chat so I can do research, because I like, I'm expected to know things like that.
Well, others will know of him. His statue is in a place called Hull, Kingston upon Hull. In the middle of the town there's a big statue of him, and he was the one who took on and it was a great big fight. There's a film actually, I think, but it was a great fight in our parliament. You can imagine.
Yes. Oh yes, I can imagine.
He got it through against an awful lot of people that didn't want it to happen, but he got it through in the end. And he personally took a lot of, he took a lot of stick, is the expression we'd say sometimes. Yeah.
There's another name that I think you should know if you don't know. I guess have you heard of Josiah Wedgwood, Baba?
I've heard the name, but I can't say that I'm familiar.
Right. Well, he was quite important in doing away with slavery, and he produced. He was a potter. He made ceramics, and he created a medallion with a slave saying, "Am I not your brother?"
Ooh. Ooh, I like that.
Yeah. So if you go to I don't know, Google Josiah Wedgwood.
Would you put his name in the chat, please?
I'll do that. And then Google the medallion, because that's like an early visual aid. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah, it was like the Me Too badge, wasn't it? So, hi, Steph. I haven't seen you for a bit. Right. So So Carmel's gone now. No, he's not. He's there. I see him. Right. Yeah. Right. So
I may have to pop off for a minute, but I'll be back.
that's okay. Okay.
Maria, if you're trying to tell us something, you're muted.
Right. So we've got our festival, which is the 8th, 9th and 10th of July. Keith, oh, you're not there, Keith, right? Your Despina's there. Hello, Despina.
Hello, are we still in the break?
Yeah, we're still on the break. We're just finishing.
Okay,
So
luckily.
what other work have you been doing?
Pardon?
What other work have you been doing? Storytelling.
Well, let me think. Nothing, because schools are closed right now. We did one event in the evening a few nights ago. There were people visiting the island from Erasmus Plus. They were educators coming from different countries, from Serbia, Croatia, Turkey, and I don't remember which other countries. And me and my storytelling team here entertained them by introducing them to Greek myths. And that was a blast. Yeah, they really, really liked it.
Well, that sounds great. Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. Well, telling stories to kids is fun, but you know, an adult audience is something else entirely.
Something bigger, yes.
Yeah. Well, it's
I
different. You
Definitely different.
needn't censor anything. You know, you just go ahead with all the violence.
I love
and
to
the
confuse
gore.
my adult audiences. I love to confuse them with jokes that, well, really bad puns, and about a minute or two later, they get it. But I move on to
Right.
something else. But you hear the ripple of laughter going across the auditorium. I love it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, right. Well, who have we got around there? Rona, have you been doing any work? What have you been doing? Oh, she's frozen.
You have to
Can't see
unmute,
her.
Rona.
No, she's
I'm
frozen.
so
I think.
glad you asked me so I can tell you. I've been up to St Andrews in Scotland, where my grandson graduated with a first class honours. Yes.
Oh,
I'm very proud of
it's
him.
St Andrews.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I'm very
Yeah,
proud
nice.
of him. And we had a fabulous time up there. We stayed at the old Course Hotel, which is stunning. Absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
The weather was gorgeous.
Yeah.
So I couldn't have asked for more. So that was since Thursday until today. I just got back today.
Congrats.
Oh,
Congrats.
brilliant. Yeah. St Andrews is beautiful.
It is, yes, I love it.
Yeah,
I had a
absolutely.
caravan up
Yeah,
there, Mike, about 20 years when the kids were young. And after, you know, at 4 o'clock on a Friday, I would be waiting outside the school and I'd just chuck the kids into the car along with the 2 dogs and off we'd go up to the East Nuke of Fife along the coast. I had a caravan in
Yeah.
St. Andrews and they loved it, you know.
yeah. That was where I used to go and visit Duncan. It was on the fight in the
Yeah.
East Nook of Fife.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, so we're going to get started again. So we're going to go to Janet, then to Carmel, and then to Despina, and then we're going to see if anybody else is around who haven't got started yet. So, Janet, we're going to go over to you.
Hello, everyone. I wasn't quite sure what story I was going to bring, and I had several in my mind, and it was Maria Luisa who prompted me about a story about Zeus. I heard this ages ago, haven't told it for ages, Despina, it's probably not a serious story about Zeus. And Zeus was an important guy, but he had a very important wife, Hera, and he loved her deeply most of the time. And on this particular occasion, he decided he would throw a party for her. And he would be in charge of the guest list. He told Hera, you can sort out the food, you can sort out the wines, but I'll sort out the guest list. And he made a long, long list. He made a list of all the gods he thought he ought to invite, and he thought, well, we'll invite Aphrodite, she's nice. Athena, she knows a few good jokes. Oh, Dionysus, yeah, he's a good drinker. Who else? Well, he just made a long list, and he even included some of creatures like Centaurus and Pegasus. And when he showed the list, Hera, she said, that's fine. But I notice that at the bottom, you've listed the trees. Zeus said, well, okay, what's wrong with inviting the trees? Now, I have to tell you that the trees in those days moved about. They were not fixed. Did you not know that, Despina? They could move about. But they also had reputations. They were the rascals. They were the rascals of the world. And Hera said, no, I'm not having them. I'm not having them in my house with their dirty roots. No. Zeus does not like to be challenged. It's my party. I know it's for you, but it's my party. And I am important. And I will invite whoever I wish. And so, okay, said Hera, you invite the trees, but you just make sure that they behave themselves. And so the trees were invited. And the party was a great success. There was wine. There was sweetmeats. There was fruit. They laid about telling jokes. There was music. Whatever you want in a party, it was there. And the trees arrived. They shook their roots before they entered. They were well behaved. They did not spill any wine. They did not even tip over the olive oil and stain the marble. It was wonderful. And then everybody left. And the clearing up began. Hera supervised. The floor was wiped, the tabletops were wiped. The windows, well, they were wiped too because they did get a bit splashed. But everything was perfect until Zeus asked, where are my silver spoons? Oh. Everybody looked around over their shoulders. No, we don't know where your silver spoons are. Under the table. No, we don't know where your silver spoons are. Behind the cushions. No, no silver spoons. On the windowsill. Were they knocked off the windowsill when we cleaned the windows? No, no silver spoons. Well, Zeus was absolutely furious to the extent where he was almost at the point of throwing thunderbolts about, but he managed not to do that. Instead, he summoned Hermes. Get here now. Well, Hermes was not going to argue with Zeus. So carefully, he walked towards Zeus and asked what his task would be. I'm pretty sure, said Zeus, that the theft occurred when the trees left. Well, yes, said Hermes, they do have a reputation, don't they? They are the rascals. Go and find my spoons. And so Hermes, with his wings all well oiled, went out into the land. Well, you can't just find a tree when they move about. And so Hermes had quite a lot of wandering about it. And the first tree that he came to was a tree that was just standing there, huge, huge and magnificent it was, the oak. And Hermes just said, "Oak, you were at the party. What about the silver spoons?" "What silver spoons?" "Well, the ones that have gone missing." "Are you suggesting, little Hermes, that you think that I stole the silver spoons?" No, said Hermes. I'm not. I'm just wondering if you know anything about it. I would have nothing to do with silver spoons. Do you not know that my branches are full of golden cups? Golden cups which hold golden acorns. I do not need silver spoons. Away! And Hermes just shrank back and wandered away. He searched and found the next tree. Ah, silver birch. Now, silver birch is fine and willowy. And Hermes thought, she's likely, isn't she? Silver birch. He approached her and said, "You were at the party. Did you happen to see Zeus's silver spoons?" No, said silver birch. No. And why would I want silver spoons? After all, my trunk is dressed in silver. My leaves fall silver. I have no need whatsoever for your silver spoons. Don't insult me further. "Oh," said Hermes, I'm away. Well, where to go next? He wandered around. There are the trees moving about. Another oak. No, he won't try that again. He won't try silver birch again. Ah, there he is, poplar, standing there. And Hermes approached Poplar, quite a young Poplar. "Poplar, you were at the party, weren't you?" "I was," he said. "We had a fine old time. It was wonderful." "Well, you don't happen to know anything about the missing silver spoons, do you, young Poplar?" "Missing silver spoons? No. Oh, no. Ah," said Hermes. "Show me your hands. There you are, you see, empty. The other one. There you are, you see, empty. Both of them." Oh, and so, and young Poplar raised his arms and in the air, and tickling down came Zeus's silver spoons. Well, Hermes picked them up, took young Poplar and the spoons back to Zeus. Zeus was delighted, but angry. You will never move again. And what is more, not another movement from any trees. All the trees will be placed exactly where they are now. That is the punishment you have brought upon your kind. And as for you, young Poplar, no more will your leaves, your branches, no more will they wave in the wind. Your branches will be upright and you will stand like this forevermore. That is why, because of Zeus's anger, trees never move and Poplar always stands with his arms upright. Now I can see from the faces of some of you that you just don't believe me. But I challenge you, next time you pass young Poplar, look at the underside of his leaves. You will see there slivers of silver. Yes. And this is proof that that story is absolutely true. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. That's a lovely story, well told. That's brilliant. Right, Carmel. The World Storytelling Cafe in Morocco, in Marrakesh. Are you there? I can't see you. Can you see me? Oh, there you are. There you go.
Yes, of course. I see Babasi. I see the good father, Mr. Joro. I see all of you. Yeah, Rona, Maria. Yeah. Okay, so good evening, all of you. I don't know if you hear me.
Good evening. Yeah. Okay. Good evening. Yeah.
Okay, great. So today is hot in Kisihia and the religious city Marrakesh. So just I want to share with you some things after we want to share with you the story. The first thing, it is a good and it's a happy news for you, for foreigners in general, because today, like I said, our local government decided to open museums at night, not only yes, this is one. The second one is Marrakesh is can say not only beautiful city in many terms like historic and epic monuments, but also there are other stuffs such poems, writing poems, storytelling, etc. And when you came, okay, so last time you discovered the genuine thing of Jennifer Square and that place. So let's go. Start with something funny, hilarious, which is, I can say, two Marrakeshi people, okay, two friends, they meet each other and they were discussing many things. And at last, one wanted to share a joke with his friend. What was? They say, don't forget our meeting for tomorrow. We are going to, like I said, to go to the sea. The another friend said, oh, friend, did you forget that in Marrakesh, there is no sea? All right. So I said, oh, okay, let's go just to artificial one. All right. So move on. And my story is about one, I can say, legendary legend of Chilean. All of you know who is he. I mean, a name start up with, I can say, 4 letters, just 4, between G and O and H and A. I mean, Juha. So once upon a time, I can say, Juha was invited, I can say, from the Sultan in Damascus, in the capital of Syria. And Juha, I can say, was, I can say, a primary, an important person, thanks to his wisdom, his, I can say, jokeful staffs, etc. So there were at a palace, a spacious palace, where I can say were inviting many people, prime ministers, I can say poets, teachers, and also Babasi. The story started with, I can say, Juha. Was directed through the palace to, I can say, attend the ceremony, and the guardians prevented him, I mean Juha, to come in, and he decided to return back home, and thinking about or planning about something, I can say, to something tricky, and that's what exactly happened. So then Juha return, I can say, back to the palace. I forget to mention that Juha came the first time with shabby old clothes, and this is the reason the guardians prevented him. Later on, he came, but this time with a new clothes, a new shape, and they allowed him to enter the palace to the ceremony, to enjoy it with others, with the rest people. That's what happened, and Juha was so glad, was enjoying the times, and until people serving, serving food, and the feast was amazing. And the inviters were starting eating and enjoying meals, except Juha. Juha was thinking about what the reason or the reasons the guardians prevented him to come in. And everyone was eating, everyone was happy with everything, but except Juha. Juha wasn't eating, wasn't doing nothing, just thinking and rethinking. After that, he decided to do something weird, something freaky. What was, I could say, he took his slaves and he started pigeon them, over the salad, the soup, and everyone was astonished. Everyone was amazed why Juha did put a pigeon, his slaves, over the salad, food, etc. So until the guardians informed the Sultan what Juha did, and he he came to talk with Juha. Why, Juha, did you put your slaves over the meat or over them? Juha said angrily to the Sultan, listen, your guardians prevented me to come into the palace. You know why? Because my clothes were shabby, were old. And I think why I'm doing like this, because my clothes and my sleeves, I think were invited, not me. I think what we can get from this short story is don't judge, don't judge anyone, or don't judge, don't judge a book by its cover, and don't turn the page until reading the last episode, or the last line. And because everyone has something bottomly inside him, or to mention, to share. All of us know everything, all of us ignore everything. Maybe others, when we look down on them, just prejudgments are always, we say, appearance are misleading, and because we think once, we live once, we love once, but we can expect several times. Thank you.
Oh yeah. Well, that was lovely, Carmel. Thank you very much. That's brilliant. Yeah. Right, so we're going to go to Despina next, and then my phone's going off. It's all right. Then Mona to finish us up, I think, tonight. So Despina, I know you're there. There she is. She's got her name in the way that we spell things in England, as well as in Greek, as it was with the Greek alphabet a moment ago. So can you hear me, Despina?
Yes, I can, Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't see you. Oh, there you are. That's beautiful.
All right. Thank you. So look at what magical things the stories are tonight, because we started off with the Greek myth, then we went to all the elegance of the swans and the gazelles in the middle, then had another Greek myth in between, and they seem to be magically connected, because what I had in mind, what I had prepared for you tonight, is the story of Hermes. Because you see, I live in this, I'm in Greece, and some of you might remember I live in a little island called Syros. Well, the capital of the island and the capital of the Cyclades, the town I live in, is called Hermopolis. Pardon the noise. Hermopolis means the town of Hermes. It is fairly new, quite modern. It was built in the late 19th century when refugees from the Turkish war came to the island to find refuge here. And we had many rich merchants coming here with their fortunes and their families to save their lives. And those were the founders of the town, actually. And as most of them were traders, as they were merchants, they decided, after they built the city, to name it after Hermes, because Hermes was the protector of the merchants. And let us see why. So you see, there was this very beautiful girl, one of the Pleiades, the daughters of Atlas, you know, Atlas the Titan who holds the whole world on his back. Well, one of the girls, the Pleiades, there were many of them, but one among them was special. She was very, very charming. And Zeus cast his eye upon her. And when he did this thing with the eyebrows. I think men do and believe they're being handsome or something when they do it. I don't know how, I don't know why, but at that particular time, well, it worked. Because Zeus went like this, and Maya started wrapping her finger around her curls, and that was it. No rape this time. No, not even need to devise a cunning plan and nor transform into anything. They just fell for each other. That was it. So they spent night after night in the Nymph's cave in Arcadia. And of course, as you have it, you cannot have God's love without offspring. So 10 months later, there she was, giving birth to Hermes, this beautiful, beautiful boy, who was a divine creature. So let's say he was very rapidly growing up, more than his mother could realize, because on the first day of his existence, he was bored, so he took this shell of a tortoise, and there were some intestines left at the side from sheep they had eaten earlier, and he took the intestines and put them on the shell of the tortoise and made them very thin and produced stars, 7 strings, 7 chords. And that was the first lyre to come to existence. That was on the first day. Now, he was a baby and he was breastfeeding, but he was very rapidly growing up, as I told you. So on the 4th day, well, he grew hungry. Mother's milk was not enough. So he started looking for food, Babasi, food, not milk. Now, he had heard that somewhere close, Apollo, his half-brother, was keeping his oxen. That is food for me, he thought. So when his mother was sleeping at the side of the cradle, he sneaked out very quietly and on tiptoe left the cave and started walking. And he got to the field where Apollo's oxen were grazing. Now, he slaughtered a few, had had a good meal, and after he was all full and done with it, he thought, why should I leave the rest? I should take them. Maybe I grow hungry later on. So he took all Apollo's oxen and started moving backwards to Arcadia, where his mother would be waiting for him. Now, he was very cunning, as I told you at first. So he used the backside of the tail of a cow to wipe out the trail that the cows were leaving. And as for his footsteps, he stepped backwards on his own footsteps. I don't know if you've seen it in films. Hermes was the first one to think of that. And this is how he covered it all up. But while he was returning, there was a shepherd at the side with his flock. And he looked at this toddler passing by with a great big number of oxen following him. And Hermes looked at him in the eye and told him, if you know what's good for you, you won't say a word. And off he went back to the cave, making sure that the oxen were kept hidden somewhere close by, safe, so that nobody would notice. So he pretended to be asleep in his cradle when Apollo went there. Apollo had gone to check on his oxen, of course, and when he saw they were all gone, well, he started walking around and see what was going on, and he did meet that same shepherd. And now he asked the shepherd, and even though the shepherd was told not to speak, well, first of all, it was a toddler who told him so, and secondly, it just didn't feel right. So he told Apollo exactly what he had seen, and Apollo, well, he didn't take a lot to put two and two together. Plus, he was a seer god. There were oracles built in his name, so he knew exactly who had taken his oxen. Off he went down to Arcadia, to the cave where Maia had baby Hermes in the cradle. And he started shouting at her and calling her some names and asking for his oxen to be given back to him. But Maia, of course, was stunned. She said, "Are you crazy? How can you claim that? Can't you see he's a baby sleeping in his cradle?" And Apollo could see Hermes sneaking pigs from the cradle, pretending to be asleep. So yeah, he knew it was him. So he grabbed him by the neck. "Come here, you," he said, and with him went back to Mount Olympus, where he addressed Zeus, the leader of all gods. So he did say that Hermes did this and this and this to me, and Zeus was striking his beard, and all the gods around who were assembled tried to suppress their giggles. And when Zeus asked Hermes, well, Hermes knew that there was no point in lying to Zeus. So he said, yeah, okay, I got the oxen. I will give them back, okay. Right, and in order to have Apollo's forgiveness, he presented him with a lyre. He said, "This is a gift for you, so you will forgive me." And Apollo took it in his hands and started tinkle, 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 playing with the chords. And soon he was so enthralled, not only did he forgive Hermes for the theft, but he also gave him the Caduceus. We know he's keeping in all the statues and all the pictures and the paintings. And so that was it. No grudges between them. In fact, he fell for the lyre so much, it did become his symbol afterwards, that he told Hermes that he would love no other son of Zeus as much as he would love him, his half-brother. So Hermes was spared, but well, he was so mischievous. When the goddesses or the nymphs would go to a spring to wash, he would go and steal their clothes and do things like that, naughty. So he had to be tamed somehow. And Zeus thought a little while on it. So he decided that the only thing to do with a mischievous, naughty child is to give them things to do, so they won't have time to do their mischievous acts. So Hermes was given the helmet with the wings and the foul sandals, they were called. So he was able to fly. He became the messenger of the gods. So he had this very important task. He was satisfied. But so gods realized that the messages were indeed delivered, and if he took on something, he would always be true to his word. And so he was given another task, a much more, important also, and a much more grim, I'd say. He got to be the psychopomp. He was the only one allowed to travel between the realms of the living and the dead. And every time somebody died, Hermes the psychopomp would take them to the underworld. And when Persephone, remember Persephone? When she was to come back to Earth to meet her mother, Hermes would be her escort to bring her back. And he was such a dubious personality, so ambiguous, because he had so many good traits, but also, well, he was a liar and a mischief, and then he was very honest and very good at what he was doing. So this balance between negative and positive traits was the one that made him so beloved by the people, because it reminded them, of course, of themselves. And that is my story for tonight.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you so much. That's great. I love these Greek tales. I really do. I do a lot of the sort of old Celtic stories and things, and they go back a long time. I think they're great. Well done, well done. Thank you very much. So for tonight, Mona, last but very much not least, where are you? Oh, you've disappeared. Where have you gone? Are you still there? There she is. You're going to unmute yourself.
Yep. Thanks,
Yep.
Mike.
Okay.
Hi, folks. Well, you know, I find this quite a sad story to tell, but I must share it with you because I think you might find it's not so sad as we get further into the story. There was a king, and he was handsome and rich, loved by his people, had everything that he could ever want, including a beautiful wife. A dutiful wife, but a wife who was yet to bear a child. And they had been married for quite some time, some 13 years. And then she discovered she was with child. Well, it wasn't just the king and the queen who were delighted. Everybody in the palace was delighted. All of the townsfolk, everybody all across the country was absolutely ecstatic that there was going to be an heir. Waiting patiently, the king marched up and down the corridor outside the room where the child was being born. The queen was being attended by every physician that the king could get to come and make sure that nothing went wrong. And nothing did go wrong. During that birth, that baby was born absolutely fine, physically strong, but there was a problem. This baby was so ugly that the physicians all shrank back in horror. The only person who didn't see this was his mother. She cooed and she cuddled and she kissed his forehead and she just absolutely adored this newborn baby boy. But everybody else looked on in horror. What was the king going to say when he saw this child? Well, when he came into the room, when he was bid to come into the room, he marched straight over. "Where is my son?" he said. And when the queen held this child up, the king gasped. A mother's love is somewhat different from a father's. He could see that all was not well. But when he saw the look of love in his wife's face, he couldn't spoil it for her. "Well done, my dear," he said. "You have produced a wonderful boy. We have our heir now." But anytime anybody came close to that child, they would reel back in shock and horror. When the queen got out of bed 3 days later and carried that child up to the tower, to the top of the tower, to hold him up to be blessed, even the clouds shrank back. Even the sea pulled back on the shore. Even the trees pulled away. This child was so ugly. None of his features were in the right place. When he smiled, you couldn't really tell that he was smiling, except for his eyes. His eyes smiled, and his mother smiled right back. But as that child grew up, the people were devoted to him. He was very, very clever. He was very sweet. He was kind. He was helpful. He was just adorable. So the people could not help but love him. But as time came on, and he was a teenager now, and the Queen said to her husband one day, "Don't you think it's time we started to think about finding a bride for Alexander?" Oh, the king had been putting off this thought for as long as he possibly could. Oh, no, no. This is going to mean bringing people in to see him. Oh, this is not going to work. So he tentatively tried to bring his wife to reality about the issue with their son. He said, "My dear, you do know that Alexander is different." She said, "Yes, of course I know Alexander is different. He's a prince and he will, No, I don't mean that, dear. He looks a little bit different from all the other boys of his age, don't you think?" Well, they're all different from each other. Love is blind. In this instance, it was unconquerable. She could not see it. Her boy was perfect. So the king could do nothing else but go along with her wishes. But he had a plan. And that plan was that the young and eligible princesses from all around would be invited to the palace. And they would hold the interviews in the ballroom. And they would hold the interviews in the ballroom in the evening when the curtains were drawn and it was candlelight. And Alexander would sit at one end of a long table, and the young princess that he would be interviewing being the correct word, he wanted to know all about these young princesses that were coming to see him. It worked because they couldn't see his face. The candelabras were tall and elegant and cast light upwards. But where Alexander was sat, they couldn't see his face. They could hear his rich voice. And as he spoke, they leaned towards him and they discussed what they could do, what they liked to do. They could hunt, they could ride, they could fight with swords. Some of them were almost as good as the young prince himself with his skills. He spoke 7 languages. One young princess won his heart immediately. Her name was Sophia, and she had the same warm, rich voice that he had. They liked the same things. She liked to hunt. She liked to ride. She loved to swim. Alexander loved to swim. There was a lake behind the moat in the castle. He told his parents that he had found the one. And her parents were called, and they sat around a table having a discussion, just the parents. When it was time to leave and then come back on an appointed day for the marriage, that's how quick these things happened back then. It would be like an arranged marriage of sorts, and the wedding would take place, and then they would be husband and wife, and that would be it, done and dusted. Except it wasn't, because Sophia had yet to see him. And when she did, the shock and the horror reviled her so much that she turned and fled. And how it happened was purely by accident. The cook's young daughter had recently been given the task of being one of the housemaids, and her job was to close everything up in the evening and make sure everything was just right. When they were having their second date at that long table, the young maid came into the room and she pulled aside the curtain to make sure the window was securely closed. And there was still just enough light coming from outside to cast straight on to Alexander's face. And Sophia let out a shriek and ran from the room. And she didn't stop. Even when she got to her parents' room, she ran through one end and out of the other. And going, she said, I couldn't marry that man. He's a monster. And her parents were totally shocked. But she wouldn't hear of it. They went downstairs, they got on their horses and they left. And she couldn't ride any faster if she tried. And they got home. But when they got back to their palace, it was surrounded. In their absence, one of the local warlords had decided to take over that castle before they came back. Alexander's mother came into the room to speak to him, and he said, she's gone. I'll never get her back. Alexander knew he was different. Alexander knew how ugly he looked. And he said, Mother, you don't see it, but no young woman wants to marry this. And for the first time, she did realize that her son was different, but she also realized that her son was very special and had more to offer than what his face looked like. So you're just going to give up, are you? You're just going to let her go? This is not the son I reared. Do you want this girl? He said, yes, Mother, more than anything I want Sophia. Well, go and bring her back. The next morning, while Sophia and her family were trying to plan what they should do to avert this crisis that they were undergoing, he wrapped himself in bandages from head to foot, pretending to be a leper. And then he put a cloak over those bandages and he took off and he rode with all of his might to get to the castle of Sophia and her family. And when he got there, they had managed to get inside. And just by a sheer stroke of luck, the balustrade that he decided to climb to go onto the first balcony was the room that Sophia was in with her parents, and she was lying on the bed sobbing her heart out. I can't believe it. I had hoped for so much. He sounded so good, and he is so clever, and he's all of those other things. Why does he have to be so ugly? And that was the words that Alexander heard when he was on that balcony. And when he walked into the room, he said, you can't see my face now. What do you think? And when she heard that voice, she said, oh, Alexander, forgive me. Maybe in time, but not now. And then there was another roar from outside as the people screaming in terror were turning and fleeing from this army that was advancing. Alexander stepped out onto the balcony and he saw them coming. And he stood on the balustrade. And as they get closer, he started to peel off the bandages. And the soldiers that got closest to him and saw him, they couldn't believe it. No, we don't want to take over this place. Look what these people look like. Oh my God, they're horrific. Alexander jumped from the balustrade and with his sword, he was prepared to fight. They had never seen anything like this. They turned and fled. Alexander went back to Sophia and her parents. And he said, I've come to take you home. And she looked at her mother and the father and she said, this bravery cannot go unnoticed. This bravery must be responded to. I will go with Alexander and we will be married. And her parents were delighted. It didn't bother them what he looked like. She was going to be the princess of the principality that was the best of all. They did marry. And only 10 months later, she was about to give birth to a child. Everybody waited with bated breath. Oh my goodness, what is this child going to look like? Look how beautiful his mother is. Let's hope he takes after her. Alexander was the first to see his newborn son. And when he looked at him, he smiled. And Sophia smiled. But that meant nothing. Love is blind. But when she held him up to see his grandfather, Alexander's father beamed. What a beautiful, beautiful boy. And he just was not beautiful. He turned out to be all of the other things that his father was. And he was no ordinary prince. He had no ordinary name. His name was Prince Charming.
Oh, thank you, Rona. That was lovely. Absolutely lovely. Just the sort of story we needed to finish up. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, so it's now 9 o'clock. I've been here for 2 hours and I've listened to some wonderful stories from some great people. And thank you very much for being here. I'll see you in a fortnight's time.
You will, Mike.
Do it all.
Thanks for hosting, Mike, and thanks for the stories, everybody. It's been lovely. Yeah.
It's been a great evening. We've got some great stuff coming up.
Yeah.
We've got, and I must apologise. My phone died, and I put it on again. And I failed to mute, and I was crinkling through Janet's story, a bloody a biscuit wrapper, and I apologise profusely for that. An embarrassment. But what we got coming up, obviously, on Tuesday we have our Young International Tellers at 5 o'clock in the evening UK time. Friday is Shantarika Joshi doing children's stories at 6 o'clock in the evening, and which I'm really looking forward to. I'll probably do it on catch up, having introduced it. I'm going to be sort of working. Then on Sunday, we're going to do a story round from the at 6 o'clock in the evening. Next Sunday, we're doing one live from the storytelling tent at Glastonbury Festival, so in the kids area. So
oh, cool.
We'll have,
that sounds good.
so that'll be fun. And then we get on, and there's oh, it's all in. I'll announce everything through the week. You can't remember everything, but it's going to be a great week coming up. And Mike, as always, thank you very much for hosting this. Ali, thank you for driving the magic carpet, and we'll see you through the week. Bye, Mike.
Yeah,
Thanks.
That's great. Absolutely. Thank you very much, mate. See you all in a fortnight's time. Have a good time in Glastonbury, John. Don't do anything I wouldn't do. Okay.
No,
I start storytelling sessions tomorrow at a live school. Yay!
Yay!
Fantastic. And the backstage bar is open in the acoustic area, so I shall go and try some otter. Right. So see you all. Bye.
Yeah,
absolutely. Go and do that.
Hello,
See you next time.
Yeah, sorry for interruption. I want just to share with you something hilarious, weird. Okay, just yesterday, 2 clients came from Slovakia, from Bratislava, and I was narrating a story to them, and suddenly they asked me a question. Do you know the shortest story ever? And this question is directed to you. What's the shortest? What's the shortest story ever? This period. Yeah, I was. Yeah, yes, Robert.
The shortest ghost story.
I know the shortest story ever told. You want to hear it?
Yes.
Do you want to hear it again?
Perfect. Okay, so I was because that question was, I say, directed to me exactly, and I was thinking about how to respond the answer. So I replayed the shortest story ever is the story never till yet.
If that,
That's it. Thank you.
Right,
All
thank
right,
you,
everybody.
and thank you, everyone. Thank you. Can't wait to get back to the cafe in reality. Kamal, we'll see you in a few months' time. Right now, good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, good night, good whatever you're having.
Bye-bye.
To be continued until the
Bye.
next time.
Bye-bye. See you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Ali.
Have a leave.
Hey, John Rowe, read the comments. I think I sent you a direct message.
That kind of might be difficult on this machine.
You don't have to read it right now. And I saved the chat. All right, good people. Take care.
Hi, John.
Yep.
How are you?
I'm just trying to leave.
Okay, good. I'm gonna
Yeah.
leave. Okay, goodbye.
Yeah, but I'm having trouble with my machine. So good night, everyone. If I can leave, that'd be good.